Hello guys. Today I'm going to discuss a little bit about is it worth learning C Sharp in 2019? Well, I'll give you my immediate opinion, so you don't have to watch the whole video if you don't want to. The answer is a resounding, most definite yes. Okay. I know some of you know that I am into other programming languages. Rust is my little baby at the moment. But I've been around a while. I've programmed in lots of different languages, all the way from basic, the good old standard old basic, not Visual Basic, just plain old basic, assembler, C++, Delphi, yes, Visual Basic as well, all the way from version 3 to 6. A few .NET languages, VB.NET. I've looked at F#, but yes, C Sharp is basically where I've made my career for the last, well, I suppose, maybe since about 2003, 2004. I think it's quite a powerful language. Sure, you cannot compare it, for instance, to something like assembler. It's aimed at completely different markets. C++, Rust, those things are aimed at something else. That's to write operating systems, extremely high-speed code, small footprints, no frameworks that come with it, large frameworks like the .NET framework. You know, C Sharp on its own, I'm sure there must be someone in the world that's written a C Sharp program, purely just a C Sharp program, but literally you can't really use it without the .NET framework. They come hand in hand. It's part of the same stack. And I guess you could then say SQL Server as well, for instance, to do the database side of things. When you're in the C Sharp world. In other words, very much a Microsoft-oriented world. There's many utilities and tools that come with it. Sometimes they come out a few years behind everyone else, but they get there eventually. And you take the person that originally created C Sharp with Microsoft. It came over, if I remember correctly, from Borland, Anders Helsberg. He worked on Delphi. And this is now many years ago. And but yeah, C Sharp is most definitely a very, very capable and powerful programming language. It's reasonably quick. It's reasonably easy to use once you get used to the syntax. But C Sharp itself is not really the difficult side of it. Is you have to learn actually the .NET framework. You know, I remember many years ago, it must have been around about 2002, around there, I had to write a base64 encoder decoder. I can't remember what I wrote it in. It was probably C++ or maybe even Visual Basic. It probably would have been version 6 back then. But I mean, now it's a one line of code to encode something into base64 using C Sharp and the .NET framework. For that matter, it applies to VB.NET as well. So yes, C Sharp is most definitely something to learn if you're going into specifically the business market. I take down here in South Africa where I am. I mean, C Sharp jobs are available galore, and it's a very good language to learn in the sense of it teaches you some good programming techniques. There are obviously a few issues with it, but you could say that about any language. I mean, if we go and look here, for instance, at the standard TOB index, you know, what are the most popular languages for 2019? And yes, Java is still up top there. It's dropping ever so slightly, but you know, it doesn't mean much. It's still very high up. But I must say, in my 25 plus years as a professional developer, I've met very few Java programmers actually. But you could say, yeah, I work mostly in the Microsoft world. And so, of course, I would know the Microsoft side of stuff more than I know anything else. Well, yes, I suppose my experience does lie more in the Microsoft world. But yes, I haven't come across many Java developers, but they're out there and they still, you know, they're number one on the ratings. They were last year, and I'm pretty sure the year before that and before that and before that as well. But if you look a little bit further down here at point number 5 is C Sharp. It's growing very slightly, but it's growing. it's interesting that Visual Basic.net is still there. Well, it's busy dropping. Okay. But C#, yes, definitely. I mean, if you want to write some operating system, some drivers or something for a video card or something like that, C# is not the way to go. It's a heavy language. Like I say, you require the entire .NET framework installed before it can really do anything. Other languages, like, I mean, if you code directly in assembler, very few of guys like that around nowadays, but they're still out there. C, C++, Rust, these things don't really require any frameworks to run. Of course, you can use external libraries and so forth, which has to be installed, but you can basically do most of the stuff within that particular language. And then those are the really more low-level languages, assembly being basically the lowest, other than machine code, obviously. And so you move up, and you get to different levels of languages, how abstract it becomes, how it moves you away from the actual, the actual hardware itself, like machine code would be, and then assembly, and then C, and so you move up the ladder. And C# fits somewhere in the middle. It's capable of, like I said, doing just about anything. It's not the fastest, it's not the slowest. It's actually very capable. There's a lot of things you can do with it. For business applications, I'm talking about probably 80% of, well, I don't know, let's say 80% of the development out in the world, C# is perfectly suited for. And like I say, you'll be learning some interesting techniques, structures, features that it makes available to you. That it's really a very, very powerful language. So yes, .NET Framework, according to Microsoft, what I read a little while, .NET Framework is sort of coming to end of life. I'm not exactly sure when it'll happen, but they're petering down on that. .NET Core seems to be the future, and .NET Core 3 has just been released. So yes, if you want to go into the C# world, definitely do learn the .NET Framework, but also get your fingers into .NET Core. The sooner you start, the better. The more experience you'll have by the time it becomes big. And yeah, it's really something worth learning. I run it. I use it. Not that often lately, but for most development purposes, I've used C#. You can call, for instance, a C++ or a Rust library from C#. You can do with many languages, but you can call all these external things from C#. If there's something that you can't do with C# in the .NET framework, the chances are fairly small that you're actually going to get to that point. Because like I say, C# is a really fully developed language. Sorry about this. It's a very powerful language. It looks at some of the latest technologies. I mean, you're going to be looking at WebAssembly soon, so that's going to become big through Blazor, Microsoft Blazor. Many languages are going to be using WebAssembly or being compiled to WASM, but C# is one of them. As far as I know, they're doing it through Mono, not the .NET framework as such. Which originated in Linux many years ago. Yes, no, C# is most definitely something to look at. And you can do all your threading. It's reasonably fast. Nothing that will hold you up typically for your general kind of development that you'll be doing. It can, you can do image manipulation. You can do bit shifting with it. You can do, I mean, it's got threading and generics and all these things that just make for a modern language. It's really a very exciting language to work in. You'll be learning a lot of techniques used in other languages as well. Once you understand C# to a fairly high level, you'll understand other languages far easier as well. It'll be fairly easy to move over into other C-type languages. I mean, Python being slightly different, well, fairly different, but capability-wise, it's really up top there. I'm just thinking, your big companies, they're all looking for C# developers. It's just how it is. I mean, one can have arguments about which is you know, the fastest language and all these kind of things. And I mean, if you look at the previous video I did, I'll add a link here to it. It's just a quick little, very simple. Please, like I said, it's a fun test in the video. It's not a benchmark of any kind. But yes, there are languages much faster than C#, and there are languages much slower. And something also important to remember, C# does not compile down. It's not a binary at the end of the day that runs on the operating system. It goes to what they call Microsoft Intermediary Language, or just MSIL, and which means that it's very easy for somebody to use something called a reflector. Many years ago we called it a disassembler, but in this case you don't need to go that far. So you know, from an exe or a DLL file, you can pull out C# code and you can look at the original code and modify it, learn the secrets, what somebody wanted to hide from you in there. You might not necessarily be able to recompile it with changes if you want to be naughty and put it back into the system if they went and strongly named it. But you can get to the code, and you can see how somebody else's code worked, how it was written. And so don't seriously, don't hide secrets in your C# code. You know, if you think something clever, like don't hide a plain text password in your C# code and you're going to base64 encode it or something, well, it's very simple for somebody to, you know, reflect the code, get the C# out of the MSIL, and see how you did it, and just reverse it, and they've got your password. So any secrets, don't hide it in your C# code. There's other ways of doing that. But purely capability-wise, I guess I'm rambling on a little bit now, but I must say, C# is an extremely capable language with the .NET Framework and .NET Core coming up, being multi-platform. So you can run on Linux, Windows, Apple. You know, you can now start through Xamarin, which I also used back in the Linux days, through MonoDevelop. Microsoft has bought the company, and they're now using that with some Mono components to be able to run on you know, Apple cell phones, Android, Windows phones. C# is really a very complete, with the .NET Framework and .NET Core, it's really a very complete solution to handle just about any business task you'll come across. The development stack is large, very capable. You get free versions of C#. What you're looking at right now is a free version of C#. It's Visual Studio, it used to be called Express, it's now called Community. You also get SQL Server Express or Community, which is free. There are some limitations, of course. Database size, I can't remember what, I think it's 2 terabytes or something. But I mean, that's massive if you really think about what you typically would, you know, if a client wants, if they can't afford to buy the, you know, a real full-blown version of SQL Server, they're probably going to be fine in the first place with something like SQL Community, because of the amount of data. It's probably not going to be a massive company. And SQL, C# and the .NET Framework ties in beautifully with SQL Server. It also supports, you know, you can use MySQL, MariaDB. I've used a whole lot of others as well in the past. What was it called? I can't remember. I mean, I've used many databases through C# and the .NET Framework. They also have their own ORM now, which they've open sourced, which is called Entity Framework. So yes, I really do think C# is something worth learning. It's going to help you in your career, most definitely. Not just if you don't specifically have clients that want C#, just understanding the syntax and the technologies that it presents you with. The features, the constructs, it's really going to help you move over to other languages as well. So yes, I don't want to hop on for hours on this, but just, you know, some people might be wondering, you know, do I not like C#, considering I'm doing some other stuff? No, C# is definitely a brilliant language. It's really something worth learning. And yeah, so I think I'll leave it at that. And so yeah, like I say, I'll just put a fun link to my previous comparison of a C# versus Rust, just for fun. Don't take anything too much out of it. It's a really silly speed comparison. It's not very technical, but it's just an interesting one. But yeah, have a look and play around with C#. There is a huge community that's going to support you. Most of the guys, everyone is friendly. There is stacks of information out there for all different versions through the years. It's really well supported. And I mean, it's Microsoft. Microsoft's going to be around for a while. They're going to make sure that their technologies move with, into the future. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with over time. Well, they've already been, but into the future, they're definitely going to be. So yes, if you're considering C#, don't waste your time. Get into it, learn it, have fun. It's extremely powerful. Well, that's it for me, and catch you on the next video. See you, man.